It's preparing. Of course, I was afraid if I was in the house that my mother would come downstairs in her pajamas and be surprised. I didn't want to do that to her. Okay. All right. All right. So we should be live on Facebook. Good morning, Keller Williams. Happy Monday Motivation. So excited this morning because I have several of you on screen, and I know there's some of you watching from Facebook Live. And we've got Johnny Smith and Adrian Bailey joining us for a conversation, and Colin Rogers is invited also to hang out with us because he's so great at time blocking. And full disclosure, my little dog Kate may bark occasionally. So we're just going to do that today. And that's real life, right? So you guys, we are in productivity. We figured out our purpose and our priority, and now how to make that happen through productivity. And on page 164, that page led into 3 things in the following order to help you to design your day and design your life. And that's time blocking your time off, time blocking your one thing, and time blocking your planning time, right? So just curious, how many out there, and you can add it to the chat if you like, have time blocked your week already? Have you spent time over the weekend and you designed what you intended to get done this week? Anyone that have done that, raise your hand, write it in the chat. Listen, I have done that because I didn't want you to bust me out on time blocking. So I've got my week designed, right, with these things in it. So Colin, you and I spend time chatting several times a month with Shannon Wilson, and I've always been impressed with your structure and how you calendar your time. And I also want to talk to you about time blocking your time off. On this page, it starts off with beginning your time blocking with you and your self-care. So can you talk a little bit about that?
Oh gosh, that's probably the one that, as you know, is the hardest to do, especially in our industry, because things just happen. And for example, we like to have a cadence of about every 6 to 8 weeks going somewhere, short trips, and take a little time off. But we're both self-employed essentially, and have projects going on, and so that makes it a little bit more difficult. But we tried to do it at the beginning of the year to try to hit at least 2 or 3 big trips to plan on, and we've got a big calendar in one bedroom that we mark off things that we want to do and time that we want to be gone. And that's actually, we started that this year, and that's actually worked pretty well for the most part.
Well, I think that the first paragraph says that extraordinarily successful people do that. They plan work around vacations, not the other way around.
Yeah.
And the least successful don't reserve time off because they don't think they either deserve it or they can afford it, or they're not thinking big around it. So I do think that it's partly a mindset. Would you agree that you have to start thinking that but you have to have that self-care, otherwise you get burnt out.
Yeah, absolutely. And you've seen that quite a bit from me, right?
I know when you've lost your joy.
Yeah.
I know when you've lost your joy. And you know what? I think it's really this book makes it seem like I don't know. I'm just going to be transparent. Okay. Sometimes this book makes me feel like I'm being a big fat loser in life. I don't know about you guys, but I think it's because, go ahead.
No, I agree 100%.
Well, and it's not that we absolutely are not. I think that the difference is we recognize that we get into our ruts and we get out of habits that are good for us, just like any habits in all the places of our life. And having these kind of conversations help us get back into extraordinary and not ordinary, and finding out what other people do. So I think that, Adrian?
Oh, sorry.
No, I thought you were saying something. I didn't want to talk over you.
Oh, no.
Okay, well, recharging yourself and rewarding yourself is important for not getting burnout. Resting is as important as working, right? So
Absolutely.
I think it's like that oxygen mask analogy we always hear, and they tell you that when you're on your flight, right? You got to put your oxygen mask on first before you can assist others with what they're going through. And so, check on your friends, check on your real estate friends, right? Those of you out
Right.
there, you don't get a badge of honor because you worked extra hours. This book is about doing what you need to do in the time that you need to get being most productive. So time blocking that first in your week and planning it. Otherwise, you'll let other people take up your day. People succeed in spite of how they rest and renew, not because of it. When you see people that burn the candle at both ends. I mean, we did see a panelist at Mega Camp that she was a single agent doing extraordinary business, and it didn't sound like she had a life worth living. And she was being coached around that. And she was like, I realize now that I need some leverage. I need to do some things differently in my life. I'm doing this, but I'm doing it in spite of resting, and I'm going to hit the brick wall eventually. So then the second thing is time blocking your one thing in your calendar. You block time off, and the most important work comes second, and that's what will help you be the most productive. So the most productive people are the ones who and experience extraordinary results, design their days around doing their one thing. And the focusing question tells them what they should do with their extra time. So if they get their one thing done first part of the day and they have some extra time, they use the focus question on what they should do next. So in a geography of time, Robert Levine points out that most people work on clock time, and it's 5 o'clock, I'll see you tomorrow, or it's 5 o'clock somewhere. Right? And while others work on event time. I really like that on this page, on page 165. My work is done when it's done. Do we ever feel like our work is done? I'm asking you guys.
Never.
No.
Okay,
Nope.
I agree that can be. That's why I'm saying that this is important to go through, because there's always something for us to do. I think when you're self-employed or entrepreneur, you feel like you always have to be working. And farmers, when they get the milking done, they're done for the day. What would it look like if we made our one thing the most important, and then we finished that, we got it done, we checked it off, and we were able to move on for the rest of the day? How are you guys doing with that? Tell me about your some of the times where you've really been powerful in your calendar and done the one thing that's going to make you most successful.
I'd say for me, I'm learning to time block, which I've been doing for at least a year, if not longer. I time block my mornings. So I'm getting my one thing done. That's my lead gen and my care calls. And I feel like that's really made a difference. Although sometimes I've noticed I do get distracted. So I need to be hyper focused on that one thing during that time. And then I do feel like I've achieved what I'm supposed to, even though there are other tasks that I need to do, getting ready for a listing, working with buyers, preparing for open houses. But I don't do that during my morning, and most people know that is my time block. Even my friends know, don't call me, don't ask me to do anything during the mornings, because it is time blocked. And I'm sorry for the noise. I took a little mini vacay and I'm in Florida. So.
Oh, okay. Well, I know I saw some of your photos recently, and you do a great job of time blocking as well. I know that there's a lot of things that come at us from the side, and I love that you've trained your friends, because it is a habit. And I think that in this chapter it talks about that, and it takes a little minute for people to get it. But when we start being consistent, they'll start seeing that that's what's important to us, and they'll respect that. So I love that you've trained, that your folks know that about you. And that's a great place to be, Adrienne.
Now I just need to my focus is not, like I said, I've gotten a little distracted. I don't know if it's, I hate to say burnout, but I need to be hyper focused on my one thing to get the results, not just doing my activity.
To get the results, not just activity. So not just going through to-do list and busyness, right?
Yes. Yes.
Well, I love that. I think so. I know, Colin, we've talked about this multiple times too, where you go back and you're like, what's your gap? What's the thing that you need to get done? And you kind of look through some of your goals and key areas of things that you're trying to accomplish and repurpose that in your calendar. And I know we've talked quite a bit about things that are in your calendar that you've moved or you found better times to do them. Can you talk to us a little bit about what you go through when you plan your week on your calendar? What does the process look like? Bless you.
Oh, so sorry. I forgot I wasn't muted. I'm so sorry.
Yeah, I think like Adrian, I try to, front load my day and get all of the big things in first. And then that makes everything a little bit easier the rest of the day. Sometimes I have to move things around. Sometimes it just doesn't work on a particular day. Like, I've been trying to work on my CRS designation, and I've moved that around a couple of times in my calendar in the week because, Fridays just didn't work. I would always have more going on Fridays. And when I had it on Fridays, I couldn't replace it elsewhere in the week. So I've got my week front loaded as well, where I've got all my big things like Monday through Wednesday. So I have very little on Thursday and Friday. Because that tends to be, at least in my world, where I'm doing the random things.
You know what? I think that's a great idea. That makes there's more of a, or there's less room for not getting it done because you've taken care of it and you let the rest of the things that happen at the end of the week.
Right.
Now I have to ask, because I know we talk about a lot of different, there's a lot of pieces to our calendar. And this section specifically has the idea that you are just going to focus on that one thing and whatever your one thing is. And for most of us, it's lead, finding new leads, working on our pipeline, getting business going, contacting our database. And for others that are listed on this page, it wasn't about real estate. Like he mentioned Stephen King and his workflow and very how simple his calendar was. Mornings belong to whatever's new, like the current composition, whatever he was working for. And then afternoons for naps and letters. I guess he worked so much on that. He had to take a nap. He had to recharge his battery, whatever that looks like for us, right? Taking a walk, having a lunch. And then letters, maybe that was follow up. I mean, I look at this in his morning working on a new composition, afternoon letters, evenings for family and whatever he enjoyed. Was he front loaded his day and he got the most important thing that made him successful out of the way. And for us, looking for new writing of composition, we're looking for new business. And then we're following up and we're having appointments after that, just like the MREA book talks about. And we have to make our family time in there too. But I mean, they spent an extraordinarily extra amount of time just focusing on that one thing, just writing. I've heard John Maxwell does the same thing. He does he finds inspiration and encouragement. He has a file every day he adds to it. And that content helped him to become who he is. And the suggestion on this page was 4 hours. So what did y'all feel about that when you read this? What did you think about 4 hours? Is 4 hours like way out here from what you normally do? And it's okay to be transparent because it's a lot of time on task over time in 4 hours. What did you guys think about that?
That's a lot. That's a lot.
It is. And at the same time, we are being told in here that people that really make that domino run in a huge way, spend a huge amount of time, a disproportionate amount of time just on the one thing and not on everything else. So, like, I think about John Williams, the great composer who's done so many musical scores for movies. He wrote, I read in one of the books I've read, talks about him, and he wrote some piece of music every single day. It may not have been great. Like, the greatness comes out of the thing. So he may have written 2 weeks worth of terrible scores or terrible little small tidbits of music, and the greatness came out of doing it over and over. And the same thing for Stephen King. And later on in this chapter, it brings up Jerry Seinfeld and how he wrote a joke a day, and he made a time, he made a calendar and he marked off a red X every day he did that. And he talked about chain events, that it wasn't about the 4 hours, it was about the chain event of doing extraordinary extra effort focused on something. So I believe that we all have it in us. We just get bored. I know for me, my biggest challenge is myself, and wanting to run off and not focus on that over and over and over. That's where the beauty comes in, if we can commit to it. I love that Adrienne has taught people that that's what she's doing, so they understand and they're not offended. Like it on page 167, it talks about things that get in our way, distractions, drive-bys, randoms, non-urgent requests. I mean, I might have, if I've seen you in the office, I was this person to you. Like Johnny Smith, you and I we're twins, right?
Absolutely.
We're hanging out. And when we all know we're working toward this, it's okay to say, if I say yes to you right now, I'm saying no to the thing that I need to get done. So, Adrienne, you have your hand raised.
I do. I was waiting for you to finish.
No, I see it now. I've got a little bit of sun in my eyes. It's my natural ring light. What do you got?
That's okay. There is something about momentum. Now, I understand that 4 hours all in one chunk seems big, but if you can take a little break, go to the bathroom, get a drink, and get back at it, because we build momentum. So I've also felt like and learned that when I do block my time and I stick with my one thing and I do it for that 2 or 3 hours that I do it, you're building momentum, and it becomes easier the longer you do it within that 2 or 3 hours or 4 hours. So when you get sidetracked with these other things that they're talking about, drive-bys, the random non-urgent requests, it breaks our momentum. So there's also the momentum that we need to keep going with, and your results become better and better because you're in your groove, if you will. And it takes a minute to get in your groove when you start. I think that's another reason to time block and do it for that long of a period.
Absolutely. I do too. And I love that you mentioned the things that recharge your battery, because it does talk about bunkering in here and protecting your time. And how do you stop allowing yourself, first of all, to want to go out and have a change of what you're doing, or recharge yourself outside of the area where you're most likely to run into random things that are going to take you off task, and getting yourself prepared for that mentally and your environment as well. And it says at the top of the page, efficiency is doing the thing right, but effectiveness is doing the right thing. And it sounds like you've got a great mindset around that, Adrienne, on knowing what could creep up and how to protect that and getting your momentum. It says, you guys are all makers. You're making things happen and you're not managers. So you're making time, and it takes large blocks of time, and protecting it. So I will tell you, I've done my calendar this week and I've blocked time, but I also had to block time for the results of the Legion time that I created to have the appointments later in the day. And now protecting that will be my biggest challenge, right? We've got it set. We know what we need to do, and making sure we are makers and not managers of all the things make that the win. So, the huge conflict of those needing maker time are pulled into meetings at odd hours. was kind of this, there was a lot of folks that were working together and they were makers. They were out there, they were really trying to make things happen in their business. And they were having meetings after meetings and all the things that were taking them off their task. And after a while, all of those makers together started operating that way and began just protecting the time that they were needed to be focused and having the meetings outside of that. And it made their company move forward. So be a maker in the morning and a manager in the afternoon. Your goal is one and done. And but if you don't time block each day to do your one thing won't become a done thing. That's on page 168.
Hey, Sally.
Yes.
One thing that I think is huge for me that I even tell my clients, if I've got a listing or a buyer, and I tell them what my schedule is. So number one, I'm preparing them. Number two, and I tell them this, rarely is there going to be something that is so incredibly urgent that I have to call you back or respond immediately. Rarely in real estate is there an emergency that calls for our attention that very minute, that we can wait until the afternoon when we've done our time blocked activities. That is our one thing.
Mm-hmm.
No, that's
We
great.
don't need to feel guilty about it.
Well, you have to decide that you're not going to let the universe control you, but you have to control your universe. Now, I will say that because, Colin, because you have been great about you time block your time for yourself, so you won't lose your joy. You time block all the things that are important to you and the goals that you're setting for yourself and your future goals. And then tell us about number 3, time blocking your planning time. What does that look like? How do you make time to make sure your calendar is going to help you succeed, hit your goals?
It's kind of funny. I don't have it written down like everything else, but I know Sunday night is my time to plan the week, look back at what I did the previous week, see what worked, see what didn't work, plan the week ahead, and really make sure that I'm focusing on the right things. But that's Sunday night, and that's just kind of a standing appointment with myself.
Well, I know that it's like it's already a habit that you just know that's the time. Do you ever, when you miss that, what happens?
I make sure that it's done beforehand. For example, I went to Moon River last night, so I knew I wasn't going to be planning that, so I did that earlier in the day.
Okay. So you did, you erased it, but you replaced it somewhere
Right.
else.
Right.
You didn't just say, well, you know what, this week I know what I need to do and I'll just get it done. You made sure that you were intentional and got it done at a different time.
Right. Yeah, because it's so important.
I know it suggests at least blocking 1 hour each week to review your annual and monthly goals. And I quite often hear agents say that they either do that on a Friday for the next week or they do it on a Sunday. Do any of you have a different time that you work on your planning for the week besides Friday or Sunday? Okay. Well, I was just curious because those seem to be the most popular times and they make sense, right? That we do that. Now it says to block about an hour for that. Do you ever look at the month before and spend some time reflecting on what the whole month looks like? Because I know we're getting to the end of the year when we're going to start looking at what does next year look like? What does that look like in your business planning? You guys have any structure around that?
I know, Sally, that usually I try to in October. I'm planning for the next year, so I'm kind of looking at all the different like the past, how I got all my clients, and like lead the sources of leads and things like that. And then I look ahead to like what is it going to take to do that? But what I'm guilty of is not that hour to go back and reflect on my goals and my plans and strategies. I just kind of like forget to do that part, and then I come across a piece of paper like, oh, I wrote that down to do this for that, and I don't review it. So that's why I'm here on this call with you guys to hear best practices for those kinds of things.
I think that we're gonna talk about, not this time, but we will talk about some goal setting tools that derive from the one thing and from my time at KW to get to the weekly and the monthly time blocking, what happens before that. And Johnny, I do think what you said was very powerful. I find myself creating those things and not keeping them in front of me all the time and reviewing them and looking at them constantly. And what I've
Right.
heard is that, when we want to be our best, that's what we will always do is keep that in front of us all the time and look at it and make sure that we keep bringing that focus back. And I think it's because we have so much coming at us all the time that it's easy to do that. And that's where community like this and accountability is really helpful as we work through those things. This section says that what I asked, like, what is the best time to do that? Well, it says don't schedule it late enough in the year so you have a sense of your trajectory. Like, you already kind of know. Some people have already hit their goals for 2023, right? And they have some space left in the year to go past that. Some are working toward, where are they in the world? So don't make it too late, but also don't make it too early. And it's kind of hard, especially if you're waiting on other entities to give you their calendar for the year, so you know what your calendar is going to look like for next year and making your plans. But remember, just go back to your time off first for the year, your one thing, and then time blocking and planning your time. So it's just those three things. And Johnny, that may be adding that weekly time for your week, but also at the end of each month, you'll need more than 1 hour, but you may need 2 or 3 hours to just look at what the whole month looks like, what's in your pipeline, and how can you, what's the one thing you can do that by doing that, everything else will be easier and unnecessary to hit your goals. It says, you're just based on where am I right now? What's the one thing I need to do this week to stay on track for my monthly goal? And for my monthly goal, what do I need to do to be on track for my annual goal? And that's a 411, which is a whole topic by itself. And I think I heard Adrian.
I might be good in the mornings, but I struggle with like time off and planning the rest of my activities, like the rest of the day, the rest of the week. And I've been reading the 12-week year because I'm hoping that that'll help me to break it down into smaller chunks, because I don't do a great job. I would love to maybe, I don't know if y'all will be doing this, not on this call, but kind of work on the time blocking on how to do this, because I don't even, this trip I'm on was on the fly. I don't do a good job of doing that. So I might be good at one part, and that was huge because I'd never done it, but I still struggle with planning the rest of activities and my personal time. So.
No, I think I totally get that. I create a time block and hope that I have everything that I need to have in it for all the things that I want to do well. And I do think that it's where we want to do everything at a high level, we still have to go back to just doing the one thing and let everything else happen. I like that 12-week year idea. I haven't read that yet. I know there's several people in the office going through that with some accountability with some peers. That might be a great thing to look for, because we're almost done with this book, to segue into that as something that we could all come together so we could take what we've learned here and apply it there and all get better together in that. So I think that's a something to look at. The Jerry Seinfeld chain, as we kind of we're working toward 9 o'clock. And I want to tell you, Colin, I appreciate you being on here. And you've made my week, all of you being on here with me this morning. So I want you to know that. This chapter had such a lot of good content. It's worth going back and rereading. As we close out, keep things simple, focus on your one thing. Don't break the chain of doing your one thing every day, like Jerry Seinfeld, right? Write a joke every day, do your lead generation every day, work on getting as much time as you can, just focusing on lead generation, where everything else will be unnecessary. The biggest goal is right now. The biggest goal is what you need to be doing right now. And then focus on that next X in the chain of I did it today, I'm going to do it tomorrow. Bunker your time, put your snacks, right? Get your snacks, Adrian, and your water, and get them where you can reach them and you can have a break, but not be distracted by walking out by the water cooler and having coffee with Sally, right? Do those 4 ways to battle the distraction is build the bunker, store provisions, sweep for any minds, which might be Facebook notifications, right? All the things that pop up that says whatever on my phone, and enlist support from others that what you're doing and the time that you're available. Like Adrian mentioned, everybody knows what she does. You can tell your sellers and buyers that, hey, every day I'm out looking for more buyers and sellers that I can match with your property or match you with a property. And I don't answer my phone during that time unless we're in a contract and it's an emergency. Just know I'll return your call after this time. And they'll go, oh, okay, because you have to train them, right? So connect the dots, find out where you want to go, time block your one thing. If your calendar, I love this, think of it this way. If your time blocking were on trial, would your calendar contain enough evidence to convict you? That's a great question, right? If somebody asked for your calendar, would it say you're time blocking for your one thing? And it will always be a battle for us to try to keep the world from knocking us off of being extraordinary, because the world's mostly ordinary, right? So we want to be different. Your time block is the most important meeting of your day. So whatever it takes to protect it is what you have to do. So time blocking is one thing. Productive time blocking is another. So no one's going to have it perfect, and yet we're going to work at being our best, right? So next week, we talk about 3 commitments to that. That's following the path of mastery, moving from entrepreneurial to purposeful, and living the accountability cycle. And we'll talk about some of those goal setting tools. You guys, let's be purposeful this week. I've got my calendar done. I hope all of you do, and that your one thing is in it. So if you come by, I will probably have my back turned to the door, and that's my way of avoiding distractions, right? So don't be offended. Don't be offended. How about you? What are you doing to bunker?
I'm gonna have to put a sign on my door.
Okay. Johnny, you always want to help people, and everyone comes to you, do they not?
Mhm.
Yes, indeed.
And you get your battery and your bucket filled with that, and it's stopping you from being extraordinary. So save your time, ask them the question, can I help you with that at this time? Because you probably can.
Well,
I
I've
need
seen
to
that
talk
you
time
can
block.
put it front on your door, and it tells people that not to disturb you. I mean, you can do it politely, but unless it's an emergency. That's why I stay at home, because then I don't have the distraction, because otherwise I'd want to talk to everybody, truth be told.
Well, I do in the morning. When I get there, I'm going to do I call it manage by walking around. And it's not really managing, it's just making sure that I walk around the building and say, hey, to who's in the building in the morning. So I see them and they see me and they know I'm there. Okay. So I do that, and I try to do that a couple of times a day, because I can get, when I'm focused on helping grow the office, then I have to get that done. And I have thousands of things, meetings, emails, questions, that I'm just like you. Okay. And I also like helping people. So I don't want to hurt people's feelings, but we've got to do different to get different results. So when we become an environment of understanding that we are in the business of being productive and doing things that matter most, we'll stop being judgmental when somebody else is doing it. So you guys go be powerful this week, and thanks for hanging out with me, and I'll see you on the other side of our most important thing we need to get done today. All right.
Thanks, Sally.
All right. Thank you, Colin. Bye.
Bye.